What's happening, guys? So today I'm going to go over the squat and I'm going to give you a bit of a tutorial on how to go through the movement more safely and efficiently. So one of the first things you need to do is determine if you want a high bar or low bar position. Typically, a high bar position is where the bar is resting up on your traps, and a low bar, the positioning of the bar is more on your kind of the top of your rear delts, and it's just going to be lower on your back. Now the advantage is typically for a low bar, most people are going to be stronger with a low bar. You're going to be able to move more weight. I mean, just by the sheer fact that the bar and the positioning of it is actually closer to your pivot point, and it's just going to make it easier to do the movement. You're going to be more stable, especially in the hole, and it just is easier to move more weight. However, that doesn't mean there aren't advantages of going high bar for some people, especially with some people who have really long torsos. Now you're going to be able to stay more upright with a high bar position, but like I said, you're going to be less stable in the hole. The other potential advantage of high bar versus low bar is high bar is going to be a little bit more comfortable on your wrists and your elbows if you have elbow problems or wrist problems. Now low bar is going to put a little extra stress on it, but as long as you get used to it, it usually isn't a big issue for most people. Now to get started, I do recommend chalking your back, especially if you're low bar. High bar is not quite as necessary, but if you have a low bar positioning, if you chalk your back, the bar is going to be a lot less likely to slip and move around on your back, especially if you have center knurling. If you have any choice whatsoever, you want to make sure your bar has center knurling because it's just going to make the bar stick on your back a little bit better and you won't have to worry about things slipping around. Now when it comes to hand positioning and grip width should be as close as comfortable to create a wedge or a shelf for the bar, making sure you grip each side with the same distance apart. Personally, I prefer to have my pinky fingers on just the inside of the ring on each side, but it's really important to make sure you do it evenly on each side. Now, when you're getting ready to set up underneath the bar, you want to make sure that you place the center knurling completely centered on your back. From there, wedge yourself underneath the bar and kind of pull the bar down into you, almost like a lat pull down feeling, and really wedge your body into that bar and get as tight as possible. One of the things that people don't pay close attention to is the fact that you should really be as stable as possible throughout the entire movement, obviously, but even when you're unracking and walking out, it's very important to be as stable as possible. And you don't want things moving around, and you want to be just as stable as possible. And in order to do this, you need to make sure you're unracking with a fairly narrow stance, within shoulder width apart, and then from the side, you want that bar to be directly over the center of your foot as you unrack the bar. Now when you actually do unrack the bar, that bar should go straight up in the air. It should not go up and forward, it should not go up and back, it should go straight up. So again, you need to be lined up and centered, and you need to be in a correct position to make this happen, and in order to do this, all you're doing is bringing your hips forward to bring the bar up. Also, do not start your walkout until that bar is settled. If there's oscillation in the bar and you start to move out, you just have forces working against you, and it's just going to make things more difficult. So unrack the weight, straight up, let it settle, and then start the walkout. As for the walkout itself, some people prefer a two-step approach, some people prefer a three-step approach. It just depends on what you're comfortable with, but I do recommend doing one of those two. Do not get sloppy, have purpose to this walkout, and don't just grab it and just go back into positioning. You want to take it slow, methodically, and have purpose to every single step and keep things as controlled as possible. Now, the benefit of the two-step approach is it's less steps, but the potential negative of it, it's a lot harder to get into the perfect position with just two steps. If you get out of alignment at all, or if you take one bad step, you're kind of stuck and it's going to be hard. You're just going to have a difficult time getting into position. So that's why I prefer this three-step approach, which I've actually done a video about this in the past, and I will link that in the description below that you can check out. But basically, you're just going to take a small step back, a slightly larger step to the side and back, and that's going to give you the start of your actual squat position. And then from there, you just kind of even things out, wiggle your toes around and get in position. But like I said, I've got a video on that in the past you can check out if you want more information on the walkout. As for your stance itself, there is no one stance that's just perfect for everybody. You gotta realize that there's a lot of things that come into play, and really, whatever makes you feel most stable and powerful, that's a good stance for you. But a good starting point would be to have your feet just slightly wider than shoulder width apart and your toes pointed out just slightly. And then from there, you can kind of play around and see how things work for you. Some people like a wider stance, some people like a narrow stance. And a lot of it has to do with leverages too. We all have, our anatomy is different, and different anatomy kind of comes into play and makes the lift a little bit different for everybody. The important thing to remember, and this is something that I've struggled with in the past myself, is everything should be perfectly even again on both sides. your toes should be pointed out exactly the same. One side should not be wider than the other. You want to make sure that everything is perfectly even. If you don't do this and you have one toe pointed out a little bit more than the other, even if your knees are tracking perfectly over your toes like you want, they're going to be tracking in different directions, and this can set you up for injury and just bad movement patterns. So make sure everything's lined up perfectly. And even if it feels like it's lined up, it's a good idea to take some video and take a look, because it may not be as good as you think it is. As you're getting ready to do the movement itself, squeeze your glutes and really brace your core. Now again, I've done a video about bracing your core in the past. I highly recommend checking that out. I will link it below. But you want to make sure you get a good brace, and it's extremely important to do this to not only be safe, but to be able to move as much weight as possible. So you're going to bring in a big breath of air into your belly, brace your abdomen, and really press against that belt if you're wearing one, or if not, you're just pressing against your abdominal wall. You're going to do this, you're going to put the tongue on the roof of your mouth to close your glottis to help you keep the air, and then you're going to go into the movement. As you start to descend, think about hips back, knees out. You want to make sure you're pressing those knees out and you're bringing the hips back, and do not lead the movement with your knees. If you start the movement coming down with your knees and then the hips follow afterwards, this is not a good situation. This is why a lot of people have a lot of knee pain, is because they're leading the movement with their knees and they're putting a lot of undue pressure on their knees that they don't have to. A lot of people ask how fast they should go through the eccentric portion of the lift, and that really just depends on how well you can stay in position. Some people can drop down really fast to stay in position. Some people have to take things really slow to be able to stay in position. And it's just going to be different for everybody, but the faster that you can do it while staying in position, the better stretch reflex you're going to get out of the bottom, and that's going to help you do the movement. But if you are losing tightness and you're getting out of position by going fast, and you want to slow things down and just kind of take it however fast you can to stay in position. If you try to go too fast and you get out of position, especially on a heavy weight, say goodnight, you're not hitting that lift. Once you go to press the weight, you want to continue to press out with your knees. You want to squeeze your glutes and really squeeze them hard to bring your hips forward and finish off that lift. One thing to keep in mind with a squat that a lot of people don't understand is that it's going to look different for everybody, especially based on your levers. People have different levers with their anatomy, and it's going to make the movement look a lot different. But in order to hit depth, somebody with, say, really long femurs and a short torso, they're going to have a lot of forward lean to be able to properly hit depth and be able to do the movement correctly. Whereas someone with a longer torso can much more easily stay upright and hit depth. So it really depends on your body. A lot of people always say, keep your chest up, keep your chest up, keep your chest up. And a lot of people struggle to ever hit depth because they're trying so hard to stay upright, but they can't for their body because they have those really long femurs and really long legs that just does not allow them to hit depth while staying upright. So just keep that in mind. If you have really long femurs and a short torso, you're going to have forward lean to hit depth. I personally have a really long torso and short femurs, so it makes it a lot easier for me to stay upright, and that's one of the reasons why the squat is probably my best lift. It just makes it a lot easier for me. The key thing to keep in mind with the squat is you want a neutral spine, and you want as close to a straight of a bar path as possible, regardless if you have a lot of forward lean or not. If you have a good straight bar path from the side, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be 100% perfectly straight up and down, but you want it as close to straight up and down as possible and over the middle of your foot. If you're doing that, you likely have a pretty good looking squat. You also want to keep your chin tucked so you have a more neutral spine this way. You want to make sure that you're not really extending your neck and having a lot of cervical extension, which that's something that I really struggle with sometimes. And you want to just kind of tuck it almost like a boxer, protecting their chin. Keep that chin tucked to keep a neutral spine, so your spine all the way from the top to the bottom is neutral. Alright, so that's how you go through the squat. One last piece of advice I'd like to give though is, if you have a lot of things to work on, don't try to do all this at once. Don't try to master every single part of the lift. Pick one or two things, focus on them hard, get them down, and then move on to the next thing after that. Because if you try to do everything at once, you're gonna be a master of none. You're gonna be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So work on one or two things and get them down solid, then move on and try to master something else after that. Because it's just too hard to do everything at once. If you have too many things to think of while you're trying to do the lift, you won't do any of it right. Alright, that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you are not subscribed, do subscribe because I've got more content like this coming out. I'm going to do a tutorial at some point for the bench and deadlift as well, and I just have a lot of different educational videos out there, and I plan on doing more of these. I've kind of gotten away from education lately, so I apologize to my regular viewers. I will be doing more moving forward. But yeah, that's all I got. Leave it a like if you liked it, and I will see you guys in the next video.